The first thing I felt in 300 years was her voice, and I did not even know it was a voice at first. Sound had left me so long ago that when it returned, it felt more like warmth than like hearing, like someone had laid a hand against a cold thing, and the cold thing had forgotten it could ever be touched. I had been stoned for so long that I had stopped counting winters. I had stopped counting anything. And then, on an autumn afternoon with the light coming gold and sideways through the ruined roof of my shrine, a young woman climbed the broken steps, sat down on the plinth at my feet as though she had every right to, and began to talk to me. "You look lonely," she said. "I know how that is." No one had spoken to me in 100 years. No one had spoken to me kindly in 300. And this stranger, dust on her skirts, a basket of moss scrapers and rags beside her, a smudge of dirt across one cheek, said it to me the way you would say it to an old friend you had been away from too long. I could not answer. I could not move. I could not so much as let my eyes find her because my eyes had been carved shut the day the curse took me, staring at nothing, fixed forever on a middle distance 300 years gone. But I heard her. God and moon, I heard her, and something in the frozen center of me that I had believed long dead turned over in its sleep. Let me tell you how I came to be stone, so you understand what her voice did. I was Riston, Alpha King of Ardenreach, in the years when Ardenreach was still a living name and not a green mound in the forest. Mine was a small kingdom but a good one, a river valley of gray stone halls and terraced fields, a people who ran as wolves under the moon and walked as men under the sun, and a line of kings who had guarded the old moontree on the high ridge since before anyone could remember. I was a hard man in some ways. War makes them so, and I had fought enough of it to earn the hardness. But I was just. I never took what I could not defend, never asked a man to stand where I would not stand myself, and never, in all my years, found the woman the moon had promised every alpha of my line, the fated one, the mate whose bond would settle a wolf's soul the way a keystone settles an arch. I had almost stopped waiting for her. I told myself a king did not need a soft thing to be whole. I was wrong about that, as I was wrong about a great many things, but I did not learn it until I had lost the chance to be right. My cousin Kadok wanted the crown. He was a clever man and a patient one, and where he could not win a thing by strength, he was willing to buy it in the dark. There was a witch in those days who lived past the edge of the wood, in a hollow where the water ran the wrong way, Vessa, the gray woman, old already when my grandfather was young. She dealt in years the way a merchant deals in cloth. She could take them from a man and add them to her own thread, and so she had lived long past any right to. Kadok went to her, and between them they made a bargain that a braver man would have refused, and a wiser man would never have offered. They took me on the night of the harvest moon in my own shrine at the foot of the moon altar where every king of my line had knelt. I remember the taste of the wine Kadok handed me, too sweet, and under the sweetness something gray and still. I remember my knees going soft. I remember Vessa's face bending over me, patient and almost kind, and her voice, which even then I did not hate, saying, "It is a mercy in its way. You will not die. You will only wait." Wait for what? I tried to say, but my tongue had already begun to harden in my mouth. She told me, "I have had 300 years to remember every word." "You wait," she said, "until one whose heart is wholly true comes to you and speaks you love freely given, no bargain, no prayer for a boon, no wish to be your queen, love with nothing wanted in return, spoken beneath the open moon. Then the stone will let you go. But no one gives love like that to a stone, king. No one has ever given it to a living man. You will stand here until the roof falls in and the forest eats your kingdom, and you will hear all of it." That was her cruelty, you understand, not the stone, the hearing. Kadok would have preferred me deaf and blind and simply gone, a monument to be pulled down and forgotten. But Vessa was an artist of a kind, and she left me my ears. She wanted me to listen to the world go on without me. She thought it would be the worst thing. For a long time she was right. I heard my kingdom fall. Kadok took the crown, and Kadok was not just, and a kingdom that is not defended does not last. I heard the wars come in from the north. I heard my people scatter, those who lived into the deep wood and over the hills, until the running of wolves under the Ardenreach moon was only a memory carried by a handful of gray shapes that still denned beneath my ridge and still, on the nights the moon was full, came and lay down in a ring around my plinth as if they remembered whose king I had been. I heard Cadoc's own line fail within 4 generations, curse-touched and joyless, until there was no one left of him at all. Small justice, and it warmed me not at all. I heard the shrine roof groan and give, one beam a decade until the sky opened over my head and the rain came in. I heard birds nest in the crook of my carved arm and raise their broods and leave. I heard snow. You would not think snow makes a sound, but when you have nothing else, you learn that it does a soft, endless settling, the whole world going quiet under a white weight. I heard 300 years of it. I counted the first 50. Then I stopped, because counting was a way of hopping, and hope in a stone man is a slow poison. I let go of counting. I let go of my name. I let the gray come up over me like water over a drowning man, and I stopped being anyone at all. And then a girl sat down at my feet and told me I looked lonely, and I remembered that I had a name after all, and that it was Riston, and that once I had been a king. She came back the next day. I had not dared to believe she would. "I'm back," she said, climbing the broken steps with her basket, a little out of breath. "I told you I would be. Nobody else believes I mean it when I say that, so I've decided to always mean it. It's a small thing to be honest about, but you have to start somewhere." Her name was Linnet. I learned it because she told the stone I was, quite simply, in the way of a person who is used to talking and unused to being answered. She was the last of the shrine keepers of Hollowmere, the village that had grown up over the bones of my valley without knowing what bones it stood on. Long ago, she did not know how long, her family had taken a vow to tend the old ridge shrine, the Grey Lord's Chapel, as the village called it, no one remembering that the Grey Lord had a face and a name and could hear them. The vow had dwindled the way vows do. By her grandmother's time, it was one visit a season. By Linnet's time, it was only Linnet, because there was no one else. Her parents were gone, of fever, when she was small, and her grandmother gone too, 3 winters back. And so the last keeper of the last shrine of a forgotten kingdom was a young woman the village thought half-cracked for climbing a ruined ridge to sweep moss off an old statue nobody else could be bothered to remember. "They think I'm strange," she told me, matter of fact, scrubbing lichen from the folds of my carved cloak with a rag and a wooden scraper. "In the village, Bramwell Harn's wife told the baker's girl that a woman who talks to stones will end up talking to walls, and the baker's girl told me, thinking it was kind to warn me. She sat back on her heels and looked up at my blind, carved face, and I would have given the whole 3 centuries to see her doing it. 'But you're a very good listener,' she said. 'Better than the whole village put together. You never once tell me I'm being foolish.' If I could have wept, I would have. I could not. But something moved in me that had not moved in a long age, a warmth, low behind where my ribs had been, faint as the first ember when you blow on ash that you were sure had gone cold. I did not understand it yet. I only knew that when she spoke, the gray water I had drowned myself in for 3 centuries drew back, just a little, and I could breathe in a way a stone has no business breathing. She came all through that autumn. She told me things. Small things at first, the price of wool, the way the miller shorted the weights, a fox that had taken 2 of her hens, the ache in her grandmother's old chair that she still sat in every evening though it had a broken rung. Then, as the weeks went and the stone kept its patient silence and never once laughed at her, she told me larger things. She told me she was lonely. She said it plainly, without any of the shame people wrap around that word. "I don't mind it most days," she said, one gray afternoon with the first snow threatening. "There's work enough and the wood is kind and the wolves on the ridge don't trouble me. They watch me from the trees when I come up, did you know? Great gray things. My grandmother said they were the old king's wolves, come to see the shrine kept. I thought it was a story, but they let me be." She wrapped her cloak tighter. "It's only in the evenings, when the light goes and there's no one to say good night to. That's the hour I mind. I heard the wolves shift in the tree line as she said it, and I understood, I who had lost the running of them for 300 years, that they had not stayed for the shrine. They had stayed for her. They had known before I did. Wolves always know first. The warmth behind my ribs grew. I will tell you the moment I understood what she was to me, because a man ought to be able to name the hour his whole long death turned back into a life. It was midwinter. The snow lay deep on the ridge and the shrine was a cave of white and gray, the broken roof beams furred with frost. She came up through it anyway, breaking a path with her boots, her breath a cloud, her nose red, her hands wrapped in rags because she had given her good gloves to a child in the village whose own had holes. She should not have come. It was a fool's climb in that cold. She came because she had said she would, and she had decided always to mean it. She swept the snow off my plinth with her mittened forearm and sat down against my carved foot, out of the wind, and for a while she did not talk at all. She only leaned her small weight against the stone that was me and let herself be tired. And then, quiet almost to herself, she began to sing. It was an old song, a lullaby, the kind a grandmother sings. Her voice was not trained. It cracked on the high note and she laughed at herself and went on anyway. And as she sang, the mark woke. I have to tell you what the mark is, so you understand what happened to me. Every alpha of my line was born with a place on his skin, over the heart most of us, that stayed blank and cold and quiet his whole life, until the day he stood before his fated mate. Then it would wake, a warmth, a light, a shape rising up out of the skin like breath fogging glass, the moon's own promise made visible. Mine had never woken. I had gone to the stone with it cold, believing the moon had simply never made a mate for me, that I was one of the unlucky ones, meant to rule and never to be met. 300 years the mark had been dead stone in dead stone, the coldest thing in a cold thing. And Linnet sang a broken lullaby against my frozen foot, and over the place where my heart had been, buried in 3 feet of carved cloak and 3 centuries of frost, the mark began, very faintly, to burn. I felt it the way you feel the sun come out from behind a cloud when your eyes are closed, a change you cannot see but cannot mistake. Warmth, where there had been nothing to be warm. Light, though no light could have reached that place. And with it, rising through me like a struck bell rings through a whole church, a knowing so total it undid me, her. This one. The moon made her for me. She is late by 300 years, and she does not know my name, and she thinks I am a rock, and she is mine, and I am hers, and the bond that never woke for any living woman has woken for a lonely girl singing to a statue in the snow. If Vesa had wanted a cruelty finer than the hearing, she could not have designed one. To be given, at last, the one thing I had wanted my whole life, and to be given her as stone. To love and not be able to lift a hand or say a word, or so much as let her know that the thing she talked to talked back inside itself, endlessly, helplessly, all through the long gray nights. "Good night," Linnet said when the song was done, patting my carved foot as she stood. "I'll come back tomorrow, I always mean it." And I stood in the dark and the snow and loved her, and could not tell her so, and had never in 300 years wanted so badly to be a man. The winters turned. She grew from a girl into a woman across the seasons. I knew her, though she would have laughed to hear me say I watched it, since I could not watch anything. But I heard it. I heard her voice steady and deepen. I heard her learn her own mind. She had a healer's way with her. She carried it up the ridge to me the way some people carry the weather in. The small hurts of the village came to her hands, a scald, a fever, a birth gone hard, and she met them all with the same patient steadiness she brought to my moss. She told me about every one of them. I knew the whole village by her telling. The miller and his waits, the baker and his kind girl, the old man who was frightened to die and the young couple frightened to wed, and Bramwell Harn, who owned the mill race and the timber rights and half the debts in Hollowmere, and who had begun, that third spring, to look at Linnet in a way she did not like. He asked my grandmother for me years ago, she told me, and I heard the trouble under the lightness she tried to keep. She said no. She said I wasn't a thing to be bought. Now she's gone and he's decided the answer might have changed. She scraped harder at the lichen than the lichen needed. It hasn't. I would have killed him. Understand me, I was a king and a warrior for the years I lived, and I had killed men for less than the way she said he looked at her, and I stood in my stone and could not so much as clench a fist. The helplessness of it was a fire that never went out. But I learned over those years that there is a kind of strength in the man who cannot act and must instead only be steady, only be there, only keep listening, and I gave her that. Whatever she carried up the ridge, she could set down at my feet, and I would hold it, silent and sure, and never drop it and never turn it into gossip, and never once make her feel foolish for the carrying. I became, without a word, the one place in her whole life where she was wholly safe. She told me so, one summer evening, and the telling of it nearly broke the stone open on its own. "You're the only one I don't have to be careful with," she said. She had brought bread and cheese up the ridge and was eating it on my plinth as the light went long and gold, sharing it with the wolves who had crept closer over the years until now 3 of them lay in the shrine itself, gray and enormous and calm, one with its great head near her knee. Everyone else, I have to think, is this safe to say? Will this get carried back? Will they think less of me? With you I just talk. You've heard the worst of me and the silliest of me, and you never once flinched. She fed a crust to the wolf at her knee. My grandmother used to say the old gray lord kept his shrine so the valley would remember it was loved. I don't know about the valley, but I think I'd have gone strange with loneliness by now, these 3 winters, if I hadn't had a lord of stone to say good night to. She looked up at my blind face, and her voice went soft in a way it had not before. "Is that a terrible thing to say to a statue, that you saved me?" Behind 3 centuries of carved cloak, the mark burned like a coal. "You did not save me by talking," I told her, in the silence where all my words had gone to die. "You saved me by being the kind of woman who would climb a ruined ridge in the snow to keep a promise to a rock. You saved me before you ever knew there was anything here to save." She could not hear it, but the wolf at her knee lifted its head and looked straight at my face, and held there, and I swear on my lost crown that it heard me even if she could not. It was Vesa who told me the bond was breaking the curse, though she did not mean to, and though she came to stop it. I felt her before I heard her, a gray cold that was not the winter's cold, a stillness in the wood that made even the wolves go silent. It was late in the 4th year of Linnet, a night with no moon, and I had grown so used to feeling nothing but Linnet's warmth and the stone's gray that the gray woman's return went through me like a blade. She came up the broken steps slow, leaning on a staff, and she was old the way a cliff is old, worn and enormous and past reckoning, and she stood in front of me in the dark and looked at me with the same patient, almost kindness she had worn the night she took me. So she said, "It's warm." She laid a hand flat against my chest, over the place where the mark burned, and I felt her flinch as though she'd touched a stove. 300 years, she murmured, and no one ever came close. I built it well. Love freely given, nothing wanted back. Under the open moon, I chose those words because no living soul had ever managed all 3 at once, let alone for a stone. She took her hand back and studied it and studied me. And now a keeper's girl talks to you like a friend and asks you for nothing and doesn't even know you can hear her, and the stone is warm. Something crossed her old face that I could not name, not quite fear, not quite grief. She hasn't said it yet, the word, under the moon, meaning it aloud. If she had, you'd already be free, but it's coming. I can feel it coming off her like heat off a hearth. She leaned on her staff. "I can't have that, King. If you wake, my long bargain unravels. The years I took to buy your cousin's crown, they were tied to your stillness. You move, they come due. 300 stolen winters all at once. It would be the end of me." I understood her then, and I even pitied her, which surprised me. She had not cursed me out of hate. She had done it out of a merchant's cold arithmetic, and now the ledger had turned against her, and she was frightened. "So I'll do the only thing I can," Vesa said. I can't stop a heart from loving. Even I never learned that trick, but I can make sure it's never spoken. I can drive the girl off. A word in the right ear in the village that the Grey Lord's shrine is cursed, that the keeper's madness is catching, that the wolves on the ridge are hunting stock. Or the other way, I can put it in Bramwell Harn's head that the shrine stone would build him a fine new mill house, and the ugly old statue with it, broken up for the foundations. Her eyes in the dark found mine, though mine could not find hers. One way or another, King, she'll stop coming, and you'll go back to sleep, and I'll go on. She turned to go. I'm sorry for it. You seem a better man than your cousin, but I've lived a long time by never being sorry enough to stop. She went down the steps and into the dark, and I stood in the moonless night, and for the first time in 300 years was afraid, not of the stone, but of losing the one thing that had made the stone bearable. Linnet, I said into the silence, though she was a mile off and asleep and could not hear. Don't listen to them. Whatever they tell you, come back. Please come back, say the word. The wolves on the ridge lifted their heads all together and howled, long and low, into the moonless dark. A sound I had not heard from my own kind in 300 years, and it was grief, and it was warning, and it was, I understood, a call. They were calling her. They were telling her in the only voice they had that her stone lord needed her. I do not know if she heard the wolves that night, but everything Vesa set in motion came due within the fortnight, and it came all at once, on the night of the harvest moon, the same moon under which I had been taken, 300 years to the turning. It began with Bramwell Harn. He came up the ridge in the late afternoon with 4 men and a cart and iron bars and hammers, and Linnet came running up behind them, breathless, having heard in the village what they meant to do. I heard the whole thing unfold at my feet, blind and fixed and unable to lift a hand, and it was the longest hour of my 3 long centuries. You can't, Linnet was saying. Master Harn, please, this is a shrine, it's older than the village, it's under a keeper's vow. It's a pile of stone going to waste on a ridge, Harn said, and I knew his voice at once from her tellings, thick and satisfied and used to winning. Good Ashler cut and squared, and I've a mill house to raise. The old lord won't miss it. I heard the men set their bars against the shrine wall. As for the vow, girl, there's no one to keep it but you, and you'll not be keeping it much longer. A woman on her own can't hold a ridge and a ruin. You'll marry, and sensibly, and there's an end. A pause, and his voice came nearer and lower, and I felt Linnet go still. I've been patient. Your grandmother's dead, and her no is dead with her. Come down off this ridge, keep my house, and I'll let the old chapel stand for you. Refuse me, and it comes down today, and you'll have neither the stone nor the choice. The threat in it was so plain and so ugly that the wolves in the tree line began low to growl. And Linnet, my Linnet, gentle Linnet who gave away her gloves and sang broken lullabies, and had never in 4 years asked me for a single thing, Linnet stood between Bramwell Harn and my shrine and did not move. No, she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. Not for the stone, not for the vow, not ever. You can pull the whole ridge down and I'll still say no, because I am not a thing you buy, and this is not a place you own, and there are older lords than you on this hill. The wolves came out of the tree line then, 3, 4, 5 of them, gray and vast, and put themselves between her and the men, hackles high, and Harn's men fell back cursing, and Harn himself went pale. The Grey Lord's wolves, Linnet said, and there was wonder in it even through her fear. They came for the shrine. Go home, Master Harn. Take your bars and your cart and go home, and do not come back up this ridge, because I will keep this vow until I die, and it seems I will not keep it alone. Harn went. Men like Harn always go when they meet a thing they cannot buy or beat, though they go promising to return. I heard the cart rattle away down the ridge in the failing light, and I heard the wolves settle, and I heard Linnet let out a long breath and sit down hard on my plinth, shaking now that it was over, pressing her face into her hands. And then the moon came up over the broken roof, the full harvest moon, huge and gold, pouring its light straight down through the open beams onto the plinth where she sat, and Vesa's second cruelty arrived, because the old witch was nothing if not thorough. I felt the gray cold slide up the steps. But this time Lynette felt something too. She lifted her head. She had never been able to see me hearing her. But she saw the gray woman standing in the moonlight at the top of the steps, and she rose, and put herself once more between the danger and the stone. "Who are you?" Lynette said. "Someone who's come to tell you a truth," Vesa said, gentle as poison. "The statue you love, girl, it isn't a statue, it's a man. A king cursed to stone 300 years, and he's heard every word you've ever said to him, every secret, every loneliness, every foolish thing. He's been listening the whole time. I thought you should know what you've been giving your heart to. A trapped thing. A dead thing that only seems dead." She was trying to horrify her. She was trying to turn 4 years of tenderness into something shameful, so that Lynette would recoil, would feel spied upon, would flee the ridge and never speak to me again. And the word, the freely given word, would never be said, and the stone would take me back. "Every private thing you ever confided to what you thought was cold stone," Vesa pressed. He heard. "Doesn't that frighten you? Doesn't it make your skin crawl?" I waited, in an agony no stone should be able to feel, for Lynette to be afraid of me. She turned slowly, and looked up at my blind, carved face in the flood of the harvest moon. For a long moment she said nothing at all, and I thought the gray woman had won. And then Lynette began, very softly, to laugh. And it was not a cruel laugh, nor a frightened one, but something breaking open, something like joy tangled up with tears. "You heard me," she said to me, wondering. "All of it, every good night, every stupid thing about the miller's weights, the evenings I couldn't bear, the song I got wrong." She put her hand flat against my chest over the mark exactly where the witch had flinched, and she did not flinch at all. "You've been there the whole time, really there, listening." Her voice went thick. "I thought I was talking to no one. I thought I was just a lonely woman keeping herself company against a rock. And all along there was someone in there hearing me, and oh," her hand pressed harder against the stone, "oh, you poor, patient thing, 300 years, and I never once said." She stopped. She looked up at the moon pouring down through the broken roof, and back at my face, and I felt the whole weight of 4 years gather itself in her, and steady and choose. "Then hear this too," Lynette said, clear and unafraid in the full light of the harvest moon, "since you've heard everything else. I love you. I don't know your name, and I've never seen your eyes, and you've never said a word to me in 4 years, and I love you anyway, for the listening, for the being there, for the safe place you made me when I had none. I'm not saying it to wake you. I'm not saying it to be your queen. I don't want anything back. I'm saying it because it's true, and you ought to have heard it said. Even once, even to a stone," her hand pressed to my heart. "There, now you've heard that too. Love freely given, nothing wanted back, under the open moon. The 3 conditions, all 3 at once, spoken by a true heart that did not even know it was breaking a curse. The stone let me go." I felt it start where her hand was pressed against my chest, a warmth spreading out from the mark like fire runs along a dry field, and after the warmth, feeling. Feeling after 300 years. It came back finger by finger, a returning so enormous it was almost pain, the carved cloak going soft and real, the frost melting off skin that remembered it was skin, the terrible carved stillness of my face breaking as a face remembers it can move. I heard the stone crack, a great splitting sound that sent the wolves to their feet and made Vesa cry out, and I felt my carved shut eyes open, truly open, for the first time in 3 centuries, and the first thing I ever saw with them was Lynette's face, tipped up in the moonlight, wet and wondering and afraid and hopping all at once, close enough to touch. I drew a breath, my first breath in 300 years. It hurt. It was the sweetest hurt I have ever known. "Lynette," I said. My voice was rough as gravel, unused for 3 centuries, and it was still the most sound I had made in all that time, and she gasped and stepped back and put both hands to her mouth, and I stepped down off the plinth. I stepped down, on legs that were flesh, and remembered how. And I stood before her, a fully living man in the harvest moonlight, taller than she'd ever known the statue to be, and I said the thing I had wanted to say for 4 years and could not. "I heard every word," I told her, "all of it, 300 years of silence and you were the only sound in it. Every good night, every song, every evening you thought you were alone. You were never alone, Lynette. I was there, I heard you, and if I could have answered, I would have answered every single time. My own eyes were wet now. I had not wept in 300 years, and I found I remembered how to do that too. You said you thought you were talking to no one. You were talking to me. You have been the whole world to a man in the dark, and you never knew it, and I could not tell you. I can tell you now. I went down on one knee before her, a king to a keeper's girl in the ruin of my own shrine. You saved my life with your voice, and you did it for nothing, asking nothing, and that is why the stone let go, because you meant it. Behind me, Vesa made a sound I will not forget. The years came due. 300 stolen winters all at once, the way she'd feared. I turned in time to see it, the gray woman folding in on herself as the borrowed time she'd hoarded ran out of her like water out of a cracked jar, her staff clattering to the stones, her enormous ancient face going papery and thin and afraid. She had been alive so long past her right that when the debt came due, it nearly took her all at once. She fell to her knees among the broken pieces of the stone that had been me, an old, old woman with nothing left, and looked up at me, at us, waiting, I think, to be destroyed. She had earned destroying. She had stolen my life, my kingdom, my kind, 300 years of the world. I was a king again, with a king's power come back into my hands, and my mate stood behind me, and the gray woman who had done it all knelt small and finished at my feet. It would have been the easiest thing in the world. But Lynette's hand came to rest on my arm. "She's just old and afraid," Lynette said quietly. "Look at her, she's not the woman who cursed you anymore. There's nothing left of that. Whatever she is now, she's already lost everything she stole." She looked up at me, and there was the whole reason the moon had made her for me, right there in her face. "You're free. Don't buy your freedom back with her blood. You're better than the men who did this to you. Be better than them now in front of me, so I know the man I love is the man I hoped he was." I looked down at Vesa. 300 years I had promised myself, in the gray, that if I ever got the chance I would take her apart. And here was the chance, and here was Lynette's hand on my arm, and I found the promise had gone cold in me the way the mark had once been cold, and warmth had come in its place. "The years you took are gone out of you," I told the witch. "You are as old as you truly are, and no older, and you have no craft left to steal more. That is judgment enough, the moon's, not mine. Live what's left honestly, or don't live long. That's yours to choose now, not mine to end." I gestured, and the gray wolves parted to make her a path down the ridge. "Go. Don't come back to this valley. If you have any small good years left in you, spend them somewhere you've done no harm. That is more mercy than you gave me, and I give it anyway, because the woman beside me asked me to, and because I would rather she loved a merciful man than feared a righteous one." Vesa stared at me a long moment, and something moved in her ancient face that might, at the very end of a very long and grasping life, have been the beginning of shame. She gathered her staff. She went, small and bent and slow, down the ridge and into the dark, and the wolves let her pass, and I never saw her again, and I have made my peace with never knowing what became of her. Some justices are not ours to finish. It was enough that she was finished. And then it was only Lynette and me and the wolves and the harvest moon, in the ruin of the shrine where I had waited 300 years for exactly this. She was looking at me the way you look at a thing you have wanted so long you cannot quite believe it is in front of you. "You're real," she said. You're a man, you're really here." Her hand came up, hesitant, and touched my face, my living jaw, the warmth of me, and her eyes spilled over. "All those good nights," she whispered. "I always meant them." "I know," I said. "I heard. I have loved you for 4 years, and I could not lift a hand to show it. Let me show you now." I took her hand from my face and held it in both of mine, and I did not pull her to me, though every part of me ached too, because Vesa had made me stone by taking my choice from me, and I would never take a woman's choice the way mine had been taken. "You said you wanted nothing back. But I have everything to give, and it is all yours if you will have it, not because you woke me, but because the moon made you for me 300 years before you were born, and put you on this ridge with a rag and a scraper and a heart too kind for the world, and I would spend whatever years I have left saying good night to you the way you said good night to me. If you'll have me, Linnet, the choice is yours. It always was. That's the difference between me and the men who cursed me." She did not answer with words. She stepped into me. She closed the distance herself by her own choice, and put her arms around a living king in the moonlight, and pressed her face against the warm chest where the mark now blazed like a small sun. And I folded her in and held her, and felt her whole small weight lean into me and be held, the way she had leaned against the cold stone in the snow so many winters ago. Only now the stone was a man, and the man loved her, and could at long last, hold her back. The mark on my chest shone bright enough to light the shrine, and its shape rose clear on my skin for the first time in my life. A wolf and a moon, and wound between them, a small singing bird. A linnet. The moon had known her name before either of us did. We did not speak for a long while. There was no need. I had done all my not speaking for 300 years. Now I simply held the woman the moon had promised me, under the harvest moon in the ruin of my kingdom, while the last gray wolves of Ardenreach came and lay down in a ring around us, the way they had once lain around my plinth. Only now they lay around their king and his Luna both, and I understood that they had never been guarding a shrine at all. They had been keeping a place for her. They had known she would come. Wolves always know first. There is not so much more to tell, and what there is only happiness, and happiness makes a short tale. I was a king 300 years out of my time, with no crown, no hall, no people but a handful of wolves and one keeper's girl. I might have grieved that I had grieved it in the stone for centuries. But it is a strange thing, standing in the ruin of everything I had lost, with Linnet's hand in mine, I found I did not grieve it at all. The kingdom I had wept for in the gray had been a thing of walls and fields and a crown. This, her voice, her warmth, the wolves, the ridge under the moon. This was the thing the walls had been built to protect, and I had it. And the walls had never mattered as much as I'd thought. We built again. Not a kingdom, those days are gone, and I do not miss the weight of a crown, but a life. I came down off the ridge with her, a stranger with an old name and old manners and no history the village could account for, and Hollowmere made of me what small villages make of any able man who is good with his hands and gentle with their keeper. First a curiosity, then a neighbor. I never told them what I had been. Linnet knew, and the wolves knew, and that was world enough. Bramwell Harn, when he heard the keeper's girl had a man on the ridge now, a big, quiet, watchful man the gray wolves followed like hounds, found his interest in the shrine stone and in Linnet both had entirely cooled, and he kept to his mill and troubled her no more and lived out his grasping little life, and that was humbling enough for a man like Harn, to simply not get the thing he'd been so sure was his. I never lifted a hand to him. I never had to. Men like Harn are undone by no more than a woman's steady no, and a ring of wolves in the trees. We tended the shrine together after that. We mended the roof, the two of us beam by beam, until the moon came in through glass instead of ruin. She still climbed the ridge, but now I climbed it with her, and the good nights were said aloud by both of us to each other, and answered. It is a small thing to say good night to someone and be answered. You do not know how large a thing it is until you have gone 300 years without it. She asked me once, on a snowy evening much like the one where she'd first sung to my frozen foot, whether I minded the 300 years, whether I was angry still at Cadoc and Vessa and all of it, at the whole stolen age. I thought about it honestly, because she had never once let me be less than honest with her, even when I was stone. I minded it more than I can ever tell you while it was happening, I said. I let go of my own name to bear it. I stopped counting the winters because counting was hopping and hopping was agony. I turned her hand over in mine, in the firelight of her grandmother's mended chair, which we sat in together now, the broken rung long since fixed. But I have thought about it since. If Cadoc had not been greedy, I would have gone on being king in my own time, and I would have looked for my fated mate among the women of my own age, and I would never have found you, because you were 3 centuries downriver, waiting to be born, waiting to grow into a woman kind enough to keep a promise to a rock. The moon made you for me, but the moon does not make the two halves of a bond in the same century always. Sometimes it makes one and lets him wait. I lifted her hand to my mouth. I waited a very long time. I would wait it all again, every winter of it, to end up here in this chair with you. I am not angry, Lynette. How could I be angry when the whole terrible road led to the one place I ever wanted to be? She cried a little at that, the way she did, and then she laughed at herself for crying the way she did, and she leaned her small warm weight against me, the way she had leaned against the stone so long ago, and I held her, and I could hold her, and I will never, as long as I live, get over the wonder of being able to hold her. I heard every word she ever said to me. That was meant to be my punishment, the gray woman's masterpiece, the fine cruelty at the heart of the curse, to make me listen to the whole world go on without me. But she reckoned without a keeper's girl who would climb a ruined ridge in the snow to keep a vow no one else remembered, and who would sit at a stone lord's feet and give him, freely and wanting nothing, the one thing 300 years of silence had starved me of. The hearing was meant to be the worst thing. Lynette made it the best thing, because I heard every word, and every word in the end was hers. She still says it every night before the fire goes low. Good night, I always mean it. And every night, 300 years of silence behind me and a whole living life ahead, I get to be the man who answers her. I know, I tell her, I heard, good night, my Lynette, I mean it too.